Hello and welcome to Connected with Latham, where we discuss ideas, legal developments, and business trends shaping the global economy. This is the 23rd episode of the Latham & Watkins Drug Pricing and Market Access series, and I'm Chris Schott, a partner in the healthcare and life sciences practice in our Washington, D.C. office. I focus my practice on all things market access, and that includes manufacturer compliance related to the Medicaid drug rebate program, Medicare Parts B and D, and the 340B drug pricing program. I also advise on current policy initiatives, such as the evolving most favored nation drug pricing issues, the ongoing implementation of the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as state law developments. Joining me is Danny Machado, an associate in our Washington, D.C. office.
Hey, Chris. Happy to be here as always.
Thanks, Danny. Today, we're happy and truly honored to welcome Mike Domanico as a guest, and I say that for a number of reasons, not the least of which being that Mike has been involved in government pricing and price reporting since the original rollout of the Medicaid drug rebate program. And all I'll say about that is Q390. And those of us who know, we know what that means. And of course, Mike was then involved in all the following developments, from 340B to ASP reporting, all the way through IRA and current developments. But in addition to being a subject matter expert on drug pricing and price reporting, Mike has also been an executive leader working for pharma manufacturers across the whole spectrum, including branded, biosimilar, and generics companies. Mike, I've mentioned a few things in your background, but do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Chris. I think you've covered it well. And Chris, I thank you for inviting me to this discussion with you and Danny today. I'm very happy to be here with you and sincerely thank and appreciate you for all the outstanding legal guidance and many issues you provided to me and my organization for many years that enabled us to be very compliant and also grow our business.
Mike, thank you for your kind words, and thanks again for joining the podcast today. In each episode, we focus on a specific topic that is relevant to market access, drug pricing, or the pharmaceutical and healthcare sectors more broadly. And after discussing the substance, we ask the question, which Olympic sport is it like? And we have the list here of the Olympic sports to see which most resembles the topic in terms of strategy, complexity, or also level of conflict. So, Danny, let me ask you, what is our topic for today?
So, as we're coming to the end of 2025, the leaves start falling. We all start putting our jackets on. It's getting cold. One thing that has remained constant over the past few years, looking back, is the topic in the subject of change. We saw the enactment of the Inflation Reduction Act, which caused just a significant dislocation, right, in the industry. And then this year, we've been dealing with the Trump administration's rather aggressive policies in the area of drug pricing. But all of this isn't unique to this decade. If we put our history hats on, as long as there's been a government price reporting regime, there's been ongoing evolution. So with this as kind of the backdrop, today we're very fortunate and we hope to learn from Mike how he has dealt with those changes over the years and what recommendations he might have for tracking, addressing legislative and regulatory developments, and just kind of staying on top of things.
Yeah, thanks, Danny, for getting us started. And Mike, maybe we'll turn it over to you and ask, can you please talk a little bit about what, in your experience, companies should do when there is legislative or regulatory change? What are some of the best practices that you might recommend?
Sure. This question has multiple aspects, as you can imagine. And I'll start with developing a deep understanding of the regulation. So read and thoroughly understand all the literature. The nuances of it are very important of the proposed legislation. One word can make a big difference, as you know. Seek guidance from internal and external counsel. Take opportunities to provide comments on the proposed legislation so that your point of view can be understood by the government and perhaps influence some change. Read all external publications from the law firms, from CMS responses, from anything. In other words, get totally immersed.
Mike, those are some fantastic points that you just made. And if I could amplify one that I think that you made just above, it's to take the opportunity to comment and to get involved on the policy side. If we think of Congress, our government, our leaders are not usually steeped in the details of the complex pharmaceutical distribution landscape in the ways that maybe some of us are. So providing comments can really help policymakers and maybe help curb decisions that are based on misconceptions, to be frank. And let's not forget the litigation angle. This is a very important point to make. In some jurisdictions, submitting a comment is a prerequisite for being able to challenge a regulation later down the line. So, very important to be thinking about commenting whenever we're able to. But Mike, going back to you, once the organization has developed a position and an understanding, what would be the next step?
Absolutely. So, Danny, you made some great points there with it. And the policymakers and the people who help them draft it are very smart, but they might not understand all the nuances of supply chains, operational feasibility. Can you get the data? So that those comments are critical. I'll add something about modeling of the financial impact. So it's not just if you're in an organization in my type of role, you really want to be able to present the financial impact to the organization. It's very important, especially for public companies to prepare the analysis for all the products, including your launch products, because it might make a big difference, or at least as many key products as feasible. You want to be able to project multiple scenarios as product sales forecasts may vary substantially, and you get a very different financial impact. So showing the range is very important. Forecasting for at least 3 years because it could vary over time, and determine if you want to make any changes, with it. You'll have the base case, but are there things you can do to mitigate the impact, to maximize an opportunity, to determine if contract or distribution changes are needed, i.e., do you want to sell to customers that are not subject to ASP-based reimbursement if there's a major ASP change? So there are, some things, but financial modeling is very critical to be able to communicate to the organization.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for making that point. And this is a complaint I hear all the time from our clients who are in-house counsel at these companies. Basically, what happens many times is the business side will propose a strategy and then turn to legal and ask for an evaluation, and there has not been any modeling done. And so then legal is kind of stuck in the vacuum, trying to analyze something without really understanding how the different parameters or levers could really have an impact. And so here we're talking not just about a business strategy, we're talking about regulatory and legislative proposals that could become binding or that are binding on the organization. So understanding the financial impact of what those types of rules could have is even more important. And let me make a point I've made in other podcasts before. Government price reporting isn't just about compliance. Yes, we have to be compliant. That's a key goal. It's not just about surviving the environment at the moment, but it's about being successful. And so if the rules of the game change, Inflation Reduction Act would be a good example. It makes sense for the company to adapt and change strategy to preserve or even enhance the chance of success. So at this point, Mike, like you said, the organization understands the proposal or change because they've gotten advice on it, they've delved into it. The organization understands the potential financial impact because they've done modeling. They have different cases, like you mentioned, there's maybe as the base case, there are other alternatives. So what's next in the next sort of step of analyzing the situation?
You hit it on the head, Chris, with it. It's engaging all the key cross-functional stakeholders because you'll need, input from all of them, informing senior executives early, so the management team. And besides that, it's also making sure you're going to get ready operationally for compliance, determining if new data sources or operational SOP changes are needed, determine if system changes are needed, securing a budget, and then make sure you're refreshing the compliance interpretation and financial projections because there may be some nuances from that work that you're doing to go back to the internal and external legal. So think of it as a loop.
And Mike, I want to pull on a thread that you made just now, which is to engage all key cross-functional stakeholders. Could you elaborate on which kinds of stakeholders you're thinking about and how each one of them may contribute?
Sure. Let me hit on some critical team members in the organizations that I work for that I made sure were engaged with it. So legal and compliance are key partners in interpretation of the regs and determining the best treatment for each price type in close coordination with external counsel. The commercial team, sales and marketing, they're the team members that know the customers best, the contract intent, because they're leading the negotiations and they know the products best. The supply chain, especially for reviewing potential distribution changes, channel changes, we're just anticipating volume changes from the regulations. The regulatory team, they're involved in prioritization or sequencing of indications, which is really important for the filings and approvals. And with the IRA or with many of the past regulations as well, helping with product attribute determinations for our reporting. The broader finance team to partner with NPVs and P&L impact scenarios. And of course, IT if there's any system changes.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for that rundown. I mean, essentially, we're touching almost all parts of the organization, right? So we haven't talked about facilities and maybe the tax department, but we know even the tax department comes into play. So I think it's a very, very important point that these types of evaluations, strategic choices, it really benefits from looping everybody in. That definitely makes sense. And, not to jump ahead to the Olympic sports bit here, but this all definitely sounds more like a marathon than a sprint. Or maybe it sounds like multiple marathons back to back with some sprints inserted for good measure. And all that makes me wonder, Mike, when are we done? Are we ever done? When are we ready?
Not for a while, Chris. There's continuous monitoring, updating the projections, with it, right? So you're taking an initial stab, but then life happens, right? And then you're a couple quarters or a year in, you want to see how do the actual results work out versus what you had estimated before, and are there things you can do to make improvements to adjust strategies as needed?
Yeah, Mike, sounds like staying on top of developments is absolutely key here. And you mentioned external advisors. So hopefully they or, us there can be helpful in that regard.
Well, and I can't let this perfect opportunity pass to put in another plug for the Latham Drug Pricing Digest, which we publish every second week. If you want to receive it in your inbox, send me an email. Otherwise, just find it online. And hopefully that can help a little bit, at least with tracking developments. Anyway, Mike, in your career, you've also been obviously a consumer of legal services, of consulting services. So when you look at those external advisors, what do you look for there? What are the things you've seen over the years that are helpful, and maybe also some things that might not have been so helpful?
We want an external advisor that is very knowledgeable on the intricacies of the regulations and combines that with an interest to truly understand our business and our transactions. An advisor that cares, like you did, Chris. That said, we will get the best result when we are very well prepared internally for the call with the advisor, making sure we have the right people to articulate our strategies, the intent of our contracts, and alternative options that we can consider. Through thorough, solid upfront work will help the advisor give us the best advice and be efficient on the call. We want an attorney that will help us be very compliant and grow the business in summary, doing both of those.
Thanks, Mike. We always appreciate hearing these kinds of insights from clients because it really helps us at the firm hone our approach. And as we heard in our introduction, you, Mike, are not only a subject matter expert in the government pricing and price reporting space, but you have held yourself various senior management positions at different types of companies.
Yeah, and maybe we can look behind the curtain a little bit here at law firms generally, right? So law schools don't teach management. Folks graduate, they go to work at firms. Within a few years, they become more senior and suddenly find themselves running projects with, more junior associates on the team. And at one point, all of a sudden, they're running a team for a deal and the closing date is tomorrow. So, Mike, you've run projects and teams, you've successfully mentored people. Are there some tips that you might be able to share in that regard?
Sure, I'll share a few. That was my best joy was really developing people and seeing them grow and move on and get promoted. So it's really about being inclusive and caring about the team members and their growth. Their being and feeling valued, creating a safe and trusted environment where people can share ideas. We invited our entire government pricing team, and in many cases, other stakeholders, to calls with external advisors and the commercial colleagues for learning and contributory experience with it. That's how you grow. We encourage rotation of assignments, assigning them different price types, sharing the financial modeling, because that's been a fun part, and if folks like doing that, we make sure we shared it across the team, learning the regs, but also learning the business deeply, encouraging them to get with our customers, our products, and contracts. Teach them, but give them free rein to be independent, lead projects and meetings. Help them with creating deep and trusting relationships within the team, and with other key stakeholders in our company and our departments. Get team members exposure to leaders in the organization, encouraging them to present and speak up, and ending with really caring and helping with their continued development, promotions within the GP team, and even rotations to other areas that they might have interest in. I find also that many times GP people are stronger when they've had other experiences versus just coming up within the GP department. So there are just a few. I can go on for a while, but back to you, Chris or Danny.
Thanks for sharing those insights, Mike. That definitely all makes sense. Certainly fostering the team and caring for the team and giving ownership. I mean, that's been my experience also. If you can give people ownership, that's when they can really flourish. So that definitely makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we come to the end of the podcast, it seems that a major takeaway is to make sure that the organization is prepared, because it's going to be inevitable that there's going to be legislative or regulatory changes. And while some of these may come as a surprise, at least being prepared means that there's not going to be as much shock as a result. And this doesn't really stop at the federal level, right? More and more, we're seeing states enter the government pricing space with 340B contract pharmacy laws or other laws that seek to regulate limited distribution arrangements, like in Arkansas, or others that would cap the prices of drugs with a reference price, like in Connecticut. So this exercise really is ongoing and almost never ending. The joy never ends. And one thing that we found useful, at least Chris and I, is having these periodic team calls with external advisors and the cross departmental teams to talk about market access / government price reporting updates, right? And how they apply to the company's portfolio, just to keep everyone informed and to be able to not just be reactive as new developments come in the law or regulations, but, also forward thinking. So with that, why don't we go back to the question we asked at the very beginning, our favorite question of the podcast: which Olympic sport is it like? And Mike, as our guest, we'd love to start with you. What do you think? Which Olympic sport is it like?
My thought is rowing, is you have to get many people aligned and working together and making adjustments for changing conditions.
That's fantastic, actually, Mike. And I picked on a similar thread, beach volleyball. Partly, as I said before, because it's starting to get cold in DC and I'm desperately missing warm weather, but also because it's a team sport where each player brings unique skills, has to communicate openly with their teammates and trust one another, establish kind of each person's role very clearly, similar to what you were saying, Mike, about bringing together a team of cross functional stakeholders: legal, commercial, supply chain, finance, IT, really to think about strategy and work in harmony with one another and ensure success. So I'll go with beach volleyball. Chris, over to you. What Olympic sport is it like for you?
Yeah, it's very interesting. You both picked something where the team aspect is kind of highly relevant. That definitely makes sense. But what struck me here also is this environment, right? We're dealing with this somewhat hostile environment we got to go through. And that's why I picked marathon swimming. And as the description says, athletes take this 10-kilometer course in open water environments, such as the sea, rivers, and lakes. And as it goes on to say, the open environment means that athletes must adjust to changing currents. So you're not just struggling to get to the end finish goal, but you have to really adapt and deal with these unforeseen challenges. And that not being enough, it goes on to explain, after approximately 2 hours of racing, there is an exciting sprint finish in the final 3 kilometers. So once again, as I said earlier, it seems you do a bunch of marathons, then there's this exciting finish where you can get to sprint to the finish line. So all that, in my mind, is pretty similar to dealing with the ever-changing environment that we're faced as pharma manufacturers in this space, and still getting to the finish line and having enough left in the tank to do the sprint at the very end. So I think that kind of wraps up our podcast, which then takes us to maybe the most interesting question. Danny, where are we going for the after party?
Well, Chris, you said the word hostile, and I want to take you guys to a place that I just went recently. It's called Your Only Friend up here on 9th Street. It has one of the most hostile but delicious spicy sandwiches I've ever tasted. It's It's called the Hot Nug, and it's basically this chicken nugget, kind of fast food style, but it's with a Nashville hot sauce. And so that is the definition of hostile. And I would like for you guys to try it. I teared up last time I did. Let's see how you guys fare.
Danny, that sounds great. I can't wait to go. And thanks, Mike, for joining us today. It's been an honor to have you on and to hear your insights on strategies, how to adapt in the ever-changing environment, and basically just some of your experience from your long, illustrious career. Really appreciate that you were here. And thanks to Danny for being a moderator.
Just want to thank you both for today, and thank you for all the great advice that you've given me over the years.
Thank you, Mike. It was great to have you on.
And thank you to our listeners for checking out the Latham & Watkins Drug Pricing and Market Access series, which is part of our Connected with Latham podcast. You can subscribe and listen to new and archived episodes of Latham's podcasts on lw.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. If you have questions or would like additional information, please email us using the links located in the show description. We hope you'll join us again next time.
This podcast is provided as a service of Latham & Watkins LLP. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship between you and Latham & Watkins LLP, and you should not send confidential information to Latham & Watkins LLP. While we make every effort to assure that the content of this podcast is accurate, comprehensive, and current, we do not warrant or guarantee any of those things. And you may not rely on this podcast as a substitute for legal research and/or consulting a qualified attorney. Listening to this podcast is not a substitute for engaging a lawyer to advise you on your individual needs. Should you require legal advice on the issues covered in this podcast, please consult a qualified attorney. Under New York's Code of Professional Responsibility, portions of this communication contain attorney advertising. Prior results do not guarantee a similar outcome. Results depend upon a variety of factors unique to each representation. Please direct all inquiries regarding the conduct of Latham & Watkins attorneys under the New York's disciplinary rules to Latham & Watkins LLP, 1271 Avenue of the Americas, New York, New York, 10020. Phone number 1-212-906-1200.